Welcome to another episode of There's Always a Lyric. Today, my guest is Alan Kraft. Alan, among many things, besides being a man infused with the entrepreneurial spirit, is someone I genuinely love to be able to say is a friend. I've known him for a number of years. We met first professionally and then realized we had so many things in common that we became friends. Alan is the founder and chief revenue officer of Media Horizons, which was born in 1988 with the goal of building an agency whose core values are steeped in serving his clients' needs and in nurturing the team's professional development. Over the years, he has led the company's strategic expansion from its beginning as an insert media company to its current state of being a full-service digital and offline response marketing agency. Currently, Alan directs new business efforts, oversees thought leadership positioning and content development, and partners with the senior management team on the company's ongoing initiatives. And that is a lot. And that is only the tip of the iceberg of who Alan Kraft is as both a leader, as a person, and as a man. So welcome, Alan Kraft. How are you, my friend?
Well, thank you, David. It's great to be on with you. And gosh, that's going to be a tough act to follow.
Especially when it's you.
No, this is crazy.
So I want to start right now. Where are we now? Where are you now? What's happening?
Yeah, so David, I think the biggest thing that's happened in January of 2020, we were acquired. We are now part of a $10.5 billion global company that's called Central National Gottesman. CNG is, I believe, the world's largest buyer and seller of all things paper related. So in our world, in the direct marketing world, they have a very significant position with virtually all of the largest catalog companies, e-commerce retail companies, publishers, and all of that. And essentially, we were required to bolt agency services on to those relationships. So we've spent the last, it's 3+ years now, essentially evangelizing what we at Media Horizons do in helping companies acquire new customers. And we've been doing it with all of CNG's customer brands, and it's been amazing. It's a group of good folks who run this business. Is interesting. We had been approached numerous times prior to this deal by other companies that were interested in acquiring us, and we never quite felt that it was the right fit. In this case, we sort of knew some of the folks, and as we got to know them better, we felt better and better about the personal relationships. And I think if there's one theme you'll hear from me, it's business, but it's personal, and there's got to be a personal connection to make something successful. And we just got along famously. The president of one of their divisions, who we were doing most of the work with on the acquisition, he and I kept talking about the fact that us and them together was going to be 1 + 1 = 3. And that's become my favorite equation. I was never a really good math student, but 1 + 1 = 3 I get. and so much so that their general counsel and their CFO got wind of this, and they actually nicknamed our deal, our project 113. So
that's cool.
Even on that level, there was just such a sense of immediate familiarity that we knew that this was going to be a good situation for us. And we were not in it just for we'll sell it and we'll get out. We love this business and we love the company, and it's been in a lot of ways my life's work. And so the fact that still here 3+ years after the deal, still flourishing, still enjoying what we do, I think is testament to the fact that it was the right group of people coming together at the right time.
Yeah, and for me, and understanding the principles of how you work, it seems like what you did there was, a major leap of faith / risk. You better than anybody knows what happens when acquisitions take place. The track record on acquisitions is not always that great in terms of the one that's being acquired and losing culture, losing the spirit of the company once they're taken over. But it seems like that's not what happened here.
Well, I mean, it's not to say that it's all exactly the way it was.
No, it can't. That's of course it can't.
Can't be. I mean, we're a much larger company now. We're a much more diverse company in terms of our client base and some of the activities that we're engaged in. But the fundamental mission and values of the company have remained the same, and if anything, have been sort of enhanced being part of this larger organization. And seriously, we've always tried to be very philanthropic as a company. The parent company really takes it to another level. And
Really?
from a cultural perspective,
Yeah.
I think people of every generation like to be part of an organization that believes in giving back and being generous with people who are in need. So it's a really good feeling from that perspective.
That sounds amazing, and it's again part of this long arc of your professional story that this is where you are now. But this didn't start this way. This didn't start from some big corporate idea, and you were a startup at one point in your life. If we could just close our eyes for a second and go back to those very early days, what was that like? What was the spark that made you go, you know what? I think I know what I want to do. Here's how I'm going to do it.
So believe it or not, it all tracks back to October 12th, 1987. Happens to be my wife's birthday.
That's a good omen.
I'm embarrassed to say I wasn't home on her birthday. I was actually in New Orleans at a industry conference.
Mm.
I was hurrying out of the conference center on my way to dinner with what was then my largest client, publishing company called Bantam Doubleday Dell. And on my way out, I ran into someone who, prior to our kids being born, my wife had actually worked for.
Mm.
A great entrepreneur unto himself.
Mm.
And he kind of grabbed me. I was kind of running. I didn't
Yeah.
want to be late for dinner. He grabbed me and he spun me around and greeted me with a big hug and said to me, listen, I heard you switched agencies. I'm kind of disappointed. I always thought you and I would get together and start an agency. And I'm like,
What?
you never mentioned that. Okay. I've known you for years. We've never had this conversation. Well, I guess maybe I thought I did and I meant to. And oh, well, I guess it's too late now. And I said to him, no, it's not. So this was literally weeks into this new engagement. And I knew early on that I had made a very bad decision going to work for another entrepreneur who, was just proved not to be a good person. Okay. And to me, working with and working for back then, good people really, makes a difference.
Right.
So he said, listen, let's get together. He lived in New Jersey at the time. And he said, come out to the house one day and we'll go for a walk. He was big on taking walks. And I'm like, okay, we'll go for a walk. It'll be great. An hour later, I go to this dinner and I'm sitting with my clients. Another hour goes by. We have a wonderful meal at a great restaurant that's still in New Orleans called Mr. B's Bistro. Mm-hmm. And dinner is over, and there were 5 people from Bantam there, and 4 of them, the senior level folks, mm-hmm. all turned and said, "We're going to walk back to our hotel." The 5th one, who is my contemporary, mm-hmm. looks at me and he goes, "We don't have to do that, do we?" I go, "No, we're in New Orleans. We're in the French Quarter. Let's go listen to some music and have a few laughs and have a beverage or two." And so we walked over. We actually ended up a very famous venue. We were on the outdoor patio at a place called Pat O'Brien's.
Oh, of course, yeah, sure.
We're sitting there having a good time, and there are lots of people from the conference there, and we're saying hi to everybody and chatting with everybody. And then all of a sudden, another one of my very significant clients from that era, the Wall Street Journal, the gentleman with whom we worked, came over to the table and sat down, joined us, and leaned into me at one point, and he said, "Listen, I got to tell you, I don't like this guy you went to work for. If you want to start your own agency, I'll give you the Wall Street Journal account."
Wow.
So within hours on the same evening, my wife Cheryl's birthday, in 1987, I was offered funding, investment, from the first gentleman, mm-hmm. and then ultimately the Wall Street Journal was telling me they'd give me their account if I started my own agency. To me, that was kismet. It was meant.
Absolutely. What a moment.
Yeah, it was pretty astonishing. And it's a story I tell often. I actually hosted a group of clients at Mr. B's Bistro about 2 months ago. And
wow, talk about bringing it full circle.
I was a little disappointed the waiter didn't remember me. But it's a great story. It really kind of sums up how I came to start the company in the first place.
It's interesting as you're telling me that story and how you describe kismet, but it's also about these relationships. Can we talk about who has helped you along the way, like mentors, coaches?
I always had a really strong interest in developing relationships with people who are older than me. both in business and personally. There's just so much more to learn from people who have more experience, who've gone through things that we've yet to go through, but ultimately will. And so from the very, very beginning of my career, in the mid 70s, I had a couple of guys that ran the business that I first started out with. It was a mailing list company in New York, a lot of direct mail. We still do a lot of direct mail today, so things are full circle. And rather than just hanging out with the others who were my age, maybe we did that on Friday nights after work. But
Yeah.
I would try as much as I could to grab lunch with those guys, grab a cup of coffee with them, be a fly in the wall, just listen to them. And I learned so much. And then, as my career sort of moved along, I worked for 3 agencies altogether before I started
Mhm.
media houses. So over a course of about 12 years, I had a couple of bosses at agency 2 and 3 who I learned from in terms of what not to do. Up until the time I started the company, I learned a lot, both good and bad, from people who were older than me and had more experience. Looking back, the true mentor in my life was the person who spun me around in that conference center in New Orleans. His name was Ed Capico. He ran a company called Media People,
Mhm.
which ironically we acquired about 12 years ago. Is still part of our company now. And Ed was just, not only was he a great entrepreneur, great business person, super successful, but he really taught me a lot about life. He taught me a lot about parenting. One of his sons, Jim, became my partner for many, many years. Jim has just recently retired from the business. But Ed was the single greatest influence that I had in terms of not just how to be successful and how to build this into a really successful business, but how to treat clients, how to treat vendors, how to treat members of the team. He was just a kind soul. He would give the shirt off his back
Mhm.
to anybody who needed a shirt. He was a
Right.
tough business guy at the
Yeah.
same time, but he just had a way about him that I've attempted to and continue to try to emulate. And so I give so much of the credit for my success to him, to his generosity.
It's interesting that this person that was a business mentor for you also was a mentor in terms of your personal relationships, family. It sounds like a very rich relationship.
It was on so many levels. He was very much part of our family, and we were very much part of his. And keep in mind, as I said, my wife had worked for him, so she had a great relationship with him that ultimately led to my great relationship with him. And we would socialize all the time and see them socially. We become sort of a product of what we learn, right?
Yes.
There's a certain amount of genetics there. There's a certain amount of environmental.
Yep.
Okay, but I think learning is everything. Not only did I get to learn from him, but I learned from a number of clients along the way. Our biggest client for 20 plus years was a company called Orek Vacuums.
Yes.
David Orek was a legendary, just passed away
Is that right?
a few weeks ago, I believe at 99.
Not a bad run.
He not a bad run at all. He was an extraordinary human being. He was a World War II fighter pilot. He was an amazing entrepreneur. David and I, along with other members of our team, spent many, many days and nights together, here in New Orleans and New York, and shooting TV commercials together. I just learned so much from him
Mhm.
as far as being a great marketer. He was the best marketer I
Right.
ever met. And just a quick aside about him, we probably over the years did, I don't know, a few dozen TV commercials with David, and David would never need a second take.
Amazing.
We used a studio in New Orleans, and he used to drive this fire engine red convertible Jaguar, and he would pull into the studio, and he, very similar hairstyle to mine. He'd get a little powder on his head. He would read the script. He would literally rewrite the script on the fly. He would go in front of the camera, one take. He'd be in and out of the studio in 15 minutes.
Wow.
Over his shoulders, he's pulling back out of the studio in that crazy car of his was, "I'll see you boys at dinner tonight."
So
and just an amazing pitch man. He was a brilliant marketer.
right, right. It was just natural. He was a natural at it.
Yeah. He
Uh,
also, at one point, around the time that Bill Clinton had left office,
mhm.
David Orrick it was reported in the Wall Street Journal, he was the second highest grossing lecturer on the college circuit
Unbelievable.
behind Bill Clinton.
That's amazing.
David Orrick.
David Orrick.
Every business school in America wanted to hear his story.
That's a great story in itself right there. When we look at with a story like that and Orrick Vacuums and the rise of Media Horizons, how do you view the current landscape?
Because we're almost as equally engaged on the digital side as we are on the offline side, there are different challenges for each, right? So on the digital side, I don't have to tell you, performance among core media, social and search is not what it was a year or two ago. So that's challenging for our clients. On the offline side, there's a tremendous amount, and this applies to digital as well. There's a tremendous amount of state-based privacy legislation that's becoming more and more problematic, which is on the minds of our clients. Postage continues to go up, making
That's
it more
right.
difficult for direct mail to be profitable. So companies more and more are doing less prospecting through direct mail. They're doing more house file or customer, mailing and marketing. So there are lots of challenges. And then there's, I don't have to tell you, we're in a kind of a wonky economy right now. And so I'll share with you something I actually was talking about on a call earlier. Today, I have a client that's in the gift food business. And for people in the gift food business, fourth quarter is everything. It's all about holidays. And so, he and I were at lunch a few weeks ago, and they were kind of wrapping up all of their fourth quarter, first quarter evaluations of the business. And we're talking a little bit about holiday performance. What he shared with me was that response rates were extremely good. They were strong. So the core group of customers that had always ordered from them historically were continuing to order, but they were all spending less. Good customers are continuing to buy. They're continuing to be good customers, but maybe they're cutting back a little bit because the grocery bill is as high as it is, or maybe because they are in need of refinancing their mortgage and they're looking at much higher rates than they would have, a couple of years ago. I'll tell you, the one thing that's true, though, of having been in business for 35 years, having been in this industry for, I hate to say it, almost half a century,
yes,
that we've been through these cycles before. Right. We've seen them, you've seen them, we started this business June of 88 on the heels of 87.
I was just about to ask you that. I mean, think about when you started.
Yeah, it was a disastrous year. And then we went through 2000, and obviously we went through 2008 and 2009. We'll come out the other side of it. More importantly, and when I say we, it's not really, it's really our clients that I'm talking about. And I think we're beginning to see some signals that things are beginning to turn a little bit in the right direction. So one thing that's true about any kind of, direct to consumer marketing is we're looking at results daily. Unlike retailers who are reporting on a quarterly basis. So
that's right.
We tend to have an early read on consumer behavior.
That's right.
And I would say that from what I'm seeing and hearing from our clients and our account facing folks, that April was a pretty good month and things are beginning to turn back in the right direction.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
So along the lines of the challenges and all that, can you point back to a particular time when failure became a great teacher for you?
How much time do you have?
Well said.
So this was probably mid 90s. I won't mention the name of the company, our largest client at the time. I got a call one afternoon from their chief marketing officer saying, listen, you guys have done great work for us, but we've decided we're going to go in another direction and we're going to bring in a different agency. And so I hung up the phone, and I don't know, we were a company of maybe 15, 20, 25 people at the time. Like, all right, well, I got to walk out there and I got to talk to everybody and tell them exactly what just happened. And there were going to be people who were going to be nervous about their positions because they were working on that account. And I just sat there for a few minutes sort of thinking about what this meant for us as a business. And it dawned on me that they were a great client. It was a great brand to represent, but that we really were not making a lot of money on the account, that it was very light margin. It was very, very work intensive. They were, as all clients should be, they were extremely demanding. It was a difficult account that was really kind of sapping our energy and bogging down our people so that they were not able to work on more profitable business. So I walked out into the office and I gathered everybody together and I told them exactly what I just shared with you. And instead of people with long faces getting their resumes together, figuring out exactly what the next move was going to be, they all came together and they all rallied,
Oh,
and
that's
and
wonderful.
they all believed in the vision that I had shared with them. And I promised them during that talk that don't worry, we'll replace this and we'll replace it with better business. And we did. It took time, it took a lot of effort. It's not easy to replace, big clients, as you
I,
know.
I know, sure.
But whether it was 3 months or 6 months or a year later, we all look back on it fondly as being a turning point, positive turning point in the company's sort of progression.
So really, the goodbye was really an opening. It was like a door opened or a window opened to seeing things in a completely different way of saying, you know what, it's great to have big clients, but they have to be the right clients for us.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, there have been numerous failures over the years. And as a business owner and an entrepreneur who learned from them, I mean, I think one of the most difficult things of having been around as long as I have is that the highs aren't quite as high as they used to be, but the lows aren't quite as low.
Right. Because it's a cycle.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
This is kind of maybe a somewhat oft repeated question, or what's your why? What's Media Horizons why? But I think you just kind of gave me a good hint at what it is.
Yeah, I think why for us always has been and always will be that the client comes first, that the client's needs come first, that if we can make our clients successful, that they're a success in that relationship
Yeah.
for us. And in order to make clients successful, you've got to have people on the team who are successful,
Right.
who are happy, who are satisfied, who are invigorated,
100%.
and so I think that's always been our why. I think that will always be the case. I find that companies that put their own wants and needs ahead of those of their clients and their people are short-lived. Maybe they're here today, but they're gone tomorrow.
Yeah. In summary, you're saying we're only as good as our people.
There's no question about that.
That's it, right?
Somebody asked me years ago, what's the secret of your success? And I said, I hire well.
Right. Right. Right.
Truly, I mean, hiring well is everything in my mind. And then inspiring, right? It's
Yes.
one thing to hire somebody, but it's another thing to inspire them to be greater than they were the day they come through the door.
That's so well put. This idea that if you give people the right tools, the right environment, the right learning opportunities too, that they can deliver something more than the status quo. They can do something transformative in the work that they're doing.
There's no question. No
Yeah.
question. I think it's spot on.
Along those lines of going above and beyond and doing what it takes, let's talk about the flip side of that, which is how do you find balance?
It's so funny. I mean, work-life balance is like, to me, it's become such an overused term in our society. It was around before COVID, but COVID really made it top of mind for people with working remotely. And now this whole, are they going to come back to the office? We're here 3 days a week. It's a great balance. But, for me personally, I became a grandfather 2 years ago. And my grandkids live about 15 minutes away. Thank you. And so, getting to spend time with them is a big part of my life. As you know, I'm still very much a foodie. I love whether it's going out with friends or going out with business associates or just going out with my wife, which is
Yeah.
the best. I continue to try to fight father time by spending as much time as I can at the gym. So it's amazing. The days that I go to the gym, I feel like a whole different person. And then there's music and entertainment in general. Let's face it, there's so much great content on television these
Oh,
days.
it's like drinking from a fire hose at this point with
You and
content.
I could spend numerous dinners talking about what series we've watched over the last
That's
4 or
right.
5 years and continue to enjoy. You and I are both, very devoted Bruce Springsteen, E Street Band,
This is true.
and still love going to live shows. And to me, those are the kinds of things that sort of help to establish that balance.
I think that the way you're describing it is those things help re-energize and fill you in a way that nothing else can. With all of the living and all of the experiences that you've had from that day of getting grabbed in New Orleans to where you are now, is there something that you can share with those that are listening today in terms of advice?
Yeah, so I think for me that the easiest advice to offer is don't be afraid to learn from your elders. Take the advice of people who've been through what you are going through. Learn from your failures, as we talked about just a couple of minutes ago.
Right.
Now, one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to young people is to get back to the office. Don't be the person who wants to work from home. Get in there, have the conversations, get yourself into that mix, but learn from all of those who are willing to teach. I know too many entrepreneurs who failed because they thought they had all the answers.
And the reality is, first, you don't have all the answers, no matter who you are. And through that learning process, you learn about yourself too, and about what
Right.
works for you and what doesn't work for you, just from listening to the experiences of others.
There's no question about it. I think, I don't care how old you are, how much experience you have. If you stop learning, or if you fail to try to continue to learn, then you're kind of not giving yourself the best chance for continued success. There's just so much that we don't know, to your point.
And, and that's something that struck me about your arc in terms of your career. You've always had this approach of a perennial student of the work that you were doing. Even in our first interactions, you always behaved as sort of this curious student personality. I think that has a big component of the success story of the company because you've maintained that.
Thank you for saying that. I truly believe that James Madison's quote, learning is the true foundation of civil liberty.
Mm-hmm.
Learning is the true foundation of success.
That's well said. Well, the title of this podcast is There's Always a Lyric. And the reason for that is our final question is always, if there's a song title or song lyric that captures you or your story, what would it be?
The song is Cats in the Cradle by Harry Chapin.
Okay.
And the reason why that song is so important in my life is I'm so much a believer in the relationships between parents and children. Ironically, I'm answering this question today would have been my father's birthday.
Oh, wow.
May 3rd, 1929. And he and I had something of a tortured relationship. And when I first heard the lyrics of Cats in the Cradle, I was the son looking up to the father in that song. And I'm guessing you know the lyrics of that song.
I sure do.
As a dad. And now I'm on the flip side of that. So I've got sons where, not just father and sons, but we're best friends and we go to Bruce concerts together. But now I've got grandsons as well. And to me, there's something about that song that you can learn so much from about the human condition.
So I'm going to break the role of being the interviewer here and just give you a personal aside. A little context first. My father is a Cuban immigrant, right? As I am. I came over on the boat with them. His favorite American song was Cats in the Cradle.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
So there's a full circle moment for me with you.
Wow. That's yeah, I would agree with you. That's really some of all the songs.
Of all the songs.
I will listen to it at some point today because it would have been my father's birthday. At the end of the day, as much as I love what I do here at Media Horizons, as much as I love the company that we are and what's come of these 35 years of hard work, it's really about family to me, and it's really about my relationships with my sons and now my grandsons.
Well, that's a great way to close out our podcast today. Alan, thank you so much for your time and for those wonderful stories. And all I can say is I wish you many more years of success and good health, and of course, the love of your family.
David, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful experience. I wish you all of the same and above. It's good to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.